Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Hashira Half Hour. I'm reliving my time stuck at home with COVID because I had COVID when this first aired in January of 2022, and I proceeded to watch it roughly 5 times in 1 week out of sheer boredom. I'm Hannah, and as always, I'm joined by Bryan and Emily.
What is up, y'all? I remember this episode very well. Not because we had COVID, but my husband, Johnny, also proceeded to watch this episode 3 times in a row the same week. So we are in the same train.
Hi, guys. It's Emily. I have not watched it 5 times 1 week before, but I have seen it many times since it initially aired. And man, do I miss Demon Slayer Sundays. Demon Slayer and Attack on Titan Sundays were like the peak of the lockdown period. And I know that lockdown was not a good time for everyone, but that was a small light in the dark. So It was really fun getting to watch those. But it's even more fun now getting to talk about them with friends. So excited to get started.
Agreed. And I knew I liked Johnny. Spirit animal. Oh, man. So today we are talking about episode 6, Layered Memories. And I, for one, am super excited to speak on this episode because, fun fact, this is my favorite episode in the entire show. I know this might surprise a lot of people based off of how much I gushed over Hinokami and the Mugen Train. However, this is where I can really pinpoint my hyperfixation starting, probably because I was stuck at home for a week and watched it multiple times. And while I love and adore Hinokami, Mugen Train, and more, something about this episode just started it for me. So let's kind of dive in. We pick up right where we left off last episode. We get a little bit of a recap of Tanjiro facing off against Daki, upper 6. While Tanjiro is holding his own and has shown incredible growth, he is still barely holding her off while she kind of is toying with him. How do you think these two are matching up, and how far does Tanjiro have to go in his journey?
I mean, the fact that he's even able to hold her off is kind of insane. We've seen him go toe-to-toe with a couple strong demons before, but for the most part, other people have stepped in and have helped. This is one of the first times we've seen him alone, fully. We've seen Giyu come to his side. We've seen Rengoku come to his side. We've seen even Zenitsu and Inosuke come to his side, so that it hasn't necessarily been alone. Considering that in this moment he is alone and handling an upper 6, I think that this is very, very impressive, given the amount of training. Granted, do I think that he is strong enough to beat her alone in this moment? I'm not sure. He probably still has quite a ways to go, but the growth since episode 1 is remarkable already.
Yeah, I think there's still 5 more layers of the onion here. So with that in mind, right, you got to think, where does Daki really fall on the power pyramid? Unfortunately, only midway, right? And so Tanjiro still has to go a very long way here. And you can see that he's really giving it his all. He's already kind of had like a small collapse in this fight, and now he's really like pushing himself, going beyond here. And I think it's really interesting to see how he just has these reserves of like emotional stamina that really come back to repower and re-energize his physical body.
Yeah, I agree. He's grown a lot, but he has a lot farther to go. I know there's a big jump between like lower 1 and upper 6, because we obviously already took care of lower 1. But even then, he really couldn't do it without Inosuke's help. So it's definitely different to see him taking on Daki completely by himself. But he's holding his own, and I think he's holding his own more than he did when he was up against Rui. So, and he was lower 5, like he was second to lowest. So we're seeing a lot of growth here. But he is, as always, trying his best. Unfortunately, things start to get a little bit worse, with Tengen having taken care of the belts extra in the underground. All of those extra belts are now entering Daki while they fight. Tanjiro keeps up with it for a while. He's trying to not freeze up. He's staying on track. She then just kind of disappears and appears on a roof mere seconds later, having moved very quickly, she gleefully declares that a Hashira is there and goes through a transformation of her own. Now we're going to see kind of a theme over this episode, maybe the next episode, about transformation. So I just kind of wanted to ask you, what did you think of Daki's transformation, and why do you think it's important that Tanjiro kind of witnessed that?
I think it's important because it definitely scales power here. I think it definitely sets a tone for the rest of this arc because as we know, every anime fight has multiple stages, right? There's no anime fight that just is over in one shot. And if they are, it's with Zenitsu present, which we'll get to talk about later. However, you see that she's like, oh, now it's time to get serious. And you can definitely see that change in her, right? I think it's when her hair turned like purely white. And I think that was a little scary for me even. And I was like, I'm not even actually there. I'm just watching this on a screen. I'm kind of concerned for my boy right now. So I think it definitely demonstrates like he still doesn't know what he doesn't know.
Yeah. Seeing the transformation, I think, is important for Tanjiro as he continues to battle the demons. I don't know that he's witnessed one exactly like this. We've seen the different forms that they can take on, and we've seen some blood demon art. But this is one of the first major transformations, and the closer and higher you get with the upper moons, the closer you get essentially to Muzan, who is a master of transformation and disguise. So I think it's going to be important to keep note of how they can transform and why they might transform, and all of the demons that could transform, possibly very soon.
Yeah, I feel like almost every demon has had some kind of transformation, whether it's Enmu and his, oh, I'm attached to the train, or Rui going from just using his threads to using blood demon art. So this one felt different though. And as Tanjiro said, he's like, oh, the scent is so strong, it's burning my throat. I wonder what that feels like. Man, that must suck. But this is where things truly go wrong. They made too much noise. Some local civilians appear outside, telling them how dare they cause such a racket, and just they're making too much noise. Why do you have a sword? Why are you brawling in front of our house? And things go from bad to worse when Daki decides to absolutely destroy everything within that path. This attack leaves a very frightening scene. We've got multiple people that were just completely killed, like they're dead. Like I don't know how any other way to explain it, because they were squashed. They were, buildings have been destroyed, and Tanjiro is taken on a slash himself and is now injured badly. He is so angry that he begins to literally bleed from his eyes. And I'd like to call out that I believe this is the first time that he has watched as a demon massacres a large amount of people in front of him without like the need for food, just kind of for game, just out of complete fun. Were you surprised by this turn of events and Tanjiro's reaction to it all going down?
No, but I think this is kind of an interesting question you've written here. And this is in its own world, but I wonder if this is what animals think about us. Like when hunters come out and they're like, you're not going to eat that. You're just going to put that on your living room wall. Good job, Kevin. Nonetheless, right. Yeah, Kevin from Texas Roadhouse. Nonetheless, right. I think it's a really interesting moment here because you're getting to see Tanjiro at this like critical moment, and it's a critical moment for the worst, right? You saw episode 1 where Nezuko had her own like massacre, and now she's, changed for the better. No one's changing really for the better in this moment. Like after those like strikes come down, you literally see like someone was like, "Hero, get up. We have to start running." And he's been smashed by rocks. He's not getting up, right? Like this is literally everything that he had healed. Daki said, "Let me rip open all of that trauma again, and let's go for round 2."
Yeah, this is definitely, I think, some of the most shocking imagery that we've seen in a while. because there was no buildup. This is one of the most senseless things I think we've seen maybe since Tanjiro's family even. And the way that we were shown that in the anime also, it wasn't entirely clear whether all of them had been devoured. Certainly they weren't devoured the way that we just saw in the food pit in the last episode. That was gruesome, and that was kind of like where things started. So we knew that the demons were capable of things like this, but this is the first time we've seen something so senseless in this season, at least. And it's like you almost can't blame Tanjiro. He's like almost at a loss, I think, for a brief moment here, because what could he possibly do? How could, like, other than just telling people to stay inside, but then inside's not even safe. She's slashing the buildings in half with barely a move. So this is where I think we're really beginning to see the true power difference. And again, how horrifying upper six can really be.
Yeah, and you kind of have to wonder if in this moment too, it's bringing back those memories of his family, like, to the front of everything, which can cause that anger that we see in his face. But just, we've seen it before with him too. Like, he probably immediately feels guilty because he couldn't protect them. And he mentions that a lot, even with Rengoku, like his emotions were more for not being able to protect him than just grief over his death. So don't blame him for being that angry. Things are about to go down, though. We do need to touch on Shinjiro really quick, because we did get a little flashback of him. The last time we saw him, he was a total jerk, and let's be honest, we all hated his guts. We did see him break that somewhat after Senjuro gave him Kyojiro's message. And we see that he is now writing Tanjiro letters. So, yay for character development. Woo! We open up to a little bit more story here. He thanks him for exchanging letters with Senjuro. Side note, big bro Tanjiro. I cry a little bit every time. But he also talks about sun breathing a little bit more. We're getting these little tidbits about sun breathing here. And he's stating that those chosen to wield sun breathing are born with a mark, just like Tanjiro. Tanjiro then explains that he wasn't born with it, but his dad had a fate mark when he was born. But he declares that he declares with complete resolve that he won't back down, that he's not going to let that affect him, even if he isn't one of the chosen ones. There are people who lack human hearts, and then he won't let that sort of tyranny continue to run free. A lot to unpack here. Can Tanjiro make himself the chosen one out of his sheer determination and drive? And what are your thoughts on sun breathing and the mark?
I definitely believe in these underdog stories where people and characters can be born that have to work so much harder than other characters might have to, because they're not born with like some kind of destiny, like I absolutely believe in that, and I love that story, and I totally think Tanjiro would be capable of it. I don't know if I think it's entirely true, though. I still think that there is a sense of purpose in his birth, and even though he wasn't born with the mark necessarily, he got it saving his little brother from a fire, like from like a very hot kitchen instrument, essentially, was the accident that he described. And that's like just so like him. It's just so like him to be able to defend others when the flames burn a little bit too brightly. So I do think that there is a sense of destiny here. And I do think that even though the mark might not have manifested itself at birth, it's manifesting itself now. And there is something special about him and his sister. And we're going to get to see that. I'm excited to get to talk more as we learn more about sun breathing.
I think I fell somewhere in the middle of this. I think Tanjiro was born under auspicious conditions, which allowed him to enact the fate that he is currently in. I think it was because maybe his father wasn't able to pursue everything he wanted to, but still was born with that mark. Maybe that's where that determination comes from. We've talked about how his father was able to dance all night, the Hinokami Kagura, but he was told to be a frail and sickly man. So we have to question, how close in power level were they, right? So you can kind of think of it from that aspect. But I think also a lot of it comes from, episode 1, where Tanjiro is still holding on to everything. And, we just kind of talked about how we reopened that trauma. There's no better time to act on it or act on your feelings when, your wounds have been reopened. So go for it, kid.
What I like about Tanjiro is that, like, is he the chosen one? Maybe. Is he not the chosen one? Maybe not. And he has to, kind of find his way through, like, that blurred line almost, it seems like. So, and I think this just kind of gives us a little bit more information regarding what's going on. I know for me, and I don't think we've ever mentioned this, the first time I watched this show, like, I noticed that his, like, scar had changed after final selection, and I was super confused about that. And this, like, doesn't really explain what's going on, but at least it gives us, a mark on his forehead. Okay, maybe there's meaning behind that change. So it's kind of nice that it's calling back to something that was so subtle the first time that they never even mention it until now. So kind of an interesting little thought there. But also, side note, the animators, I don't know if you guys caught this because I didn't catch this for a while. The animators showed us a brief glimpse at how fast Tanjiro was when he went after Daki. They literally just showed a puff of wind and the location where he had been standing after she left. I thought it was showing her leaving. No, it was him leaving his spot. Like, he is on something right now. He is an absolute beast currently. As he catches up to her, he grabs onto her leg so strongly that she has to break it off to get away from him. And he's still holding on to it when he starts talking to her. I'm like, okay, all right, what's going on here? What is this Tanjiro? We have not seen him like this before. He begins to speak to her, and his voice is calm. It's quieter than I think we've ever heard from him, because he's a super passionate kid. He's saying, why would you trample on these lives? What is so funny about this to you? Why would you rob them? Damn, Tanjiro, go off. His words also spark a memory that Daki explains is not her own. It's Muzan's. We see a man with Hanafuda earrings. Who do you think this man is? And how powerful is Tanjiro in this moment that he is able to invoke memories at the cellular level?
Memories from the future. I'm just kidding.
No. No.
Hey.
Don't go there, Bryan, please. No. No, please, no.
LOL. But I think it's really interesting, right? I think it kind of ties into your previous question here about fate and destiny. I think there is something to be said for the resemblance of this character we've seen come back, because we saw him in Mugen, and he helped Tanjiro get out of Enmu's dream traps. So I think it's really interesting that they keep providing us this parallel of this really mysterious, but, obviously we can infer that he's very powerful with the way that all of the demons, or at least Daki, has responded to him. With this memory being activated, she's like, oh shit. Like, and if Muzan experienced that and had that same terror, what does that say for Daki? Right?
Yeah. This is a memory clearly that is so ingrained in his mentality that it's been passed along genetically, essentially, to probably a lot of the upper six at this point. It's like a physiological reaction now. So this man, we don't know exactly who he was, but he has the Hanafuda earrings, and he bears a striking resemblance, doesn't he? If not hundreds of years in the past. Who knows exactly how old, but this would explain, I think, for one thing, why Muzan has specifically called him out as the kid with the Hanafuda earrings. For one. For another, targeting him and potentially his sister, as the end goal here is a result of that fear. And he's not afraid of a lot of things. So this person, even though we don't know who this is yet, is probably on a level similar to Muzan, if not possibly stronger.
Yeah, I like that you call that out, because it we're connecting dots to the story now, because we saw Muzan kind of have that moment of fear when he saw Tanjiro the first time, which felt like super out of place almost. Like, why would you kind of look at this kid and be scared, when you're the Demon King? And then he very specifically was like, bring me the head of the kid with the Hanafuda earrings. And that was the thing that he mentioned, was the Hanafuda earrings. There's a lot of other things about Tanjiro that you could call out, but so it's definitely interesting to see. And I kind of talked about like Tanjiro's power, but I think it more explains this mystery man's power, clearly just being so incredible that Muzan's fear has passed on to the demons that have his blood. It's pretty wild. I'm excited to see more of that character possibly make a name for themselves in the future. But moving on, we then get one of the most visually stunning, beautifully choreographed fight scenes to date, in my opinion. I know some people might not agree with me, but I think it's one of the best ones. Tanjiro seems like someone else. He's being smart, which is pretty common for him, fast and powerful. And for the first time, Daki is actually scared of him, like genuinely just scared. She's surprised. She doesn't know what's going on, even though she is now using a blood demon art. So she is now more powerful. Tanjiro feels almost Hashira level at this moment in time, don't you think?
At this moment, I think he's pretty close, or at least it feels that way for us. We know he's not necessarily quite at that level yet, but something is overtaking him, which is what brings me back to my answer from a couple questions ago. But I do think there is a sense of destiny here for sure, because he is tapping into something, and so is she at this point, in different and opposite ways that we don't even understand, because it's something that is ingrained in their DNA from who knows how long in the past. But there is something special going on here, and I do think that whatever that power is that he's able to tap into will allow him to fight as close to Hashira level as possible. And if he's able to continue to hone this skill, I think that he could get there a lot more quickly than other people could.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about power-ups across all anime, right? In other shows, like let's take Dragon Ball as an example, right? You can clearly see when someone's powering up. Like, it's pretty fucking blatantly obvious. Like, let's be real, right? They're like, yeah, and then they change their hair color. Like, very clearly a power up. Now, what I like about what Demon Slayer did here is that they gave us this sense of of mystery, right? Like, you're now given food for thought as to what is it exactly that is providing them this new level of fight, caliber? Like, where did this come from? And I think that's really fun, because it's what drives the fight forward. You're now not only drawn into the beautiful animation and the meaning of the fight, but you're also questioning why the fight is getting more intense. And I think that's what's really interesting about this film, is because you have to really consider all of the factors here. We obviously understand that Tanjiro is going off on this emotional rampage. Daki has now consumed all of these humans, and I think there's still more coming back to her, really. We know that there were a couple bouts in the first kind of bout of this fight that came back, but really, what else is coming through here? And I think that's what really provides us an interesting fight scene.
Yeah, they're introducing a lot of mystery, starting with the blood tears. What is that? What is happening? I remember when I showed my sister Demon Slayer for the first time, when that happened, she just looked at me and was like, what? So we're getting a lot of questions, but we're also just getting treated to a stunning fight with Hinokami Kagura. And we're seeing Tanjiro move faster than we've ever seen him move before. We're seeing him really hone those sword skills that he's been working so hard at. This scene was just an honestly a treat. Just beautiful to watch, and also giving us a lot of mysteries and story development as well. So it was extremely well done. Everything about the fight gives me chills. However, he is in a state that one cannot stay in for a long period of time. If you didn't notice, he hasn't blinked once since the blood tear started. Also, he wasn't breathing. I'm actually going to quote the manga here as it gives an explanation of the situation that we don't get in the anime, and I'll admit the first few times I watched it, I was confused, so I'm going to read it right now. Human beings have two limitations. When they reach their physical limit, they're wrecked with pain and cannot move. But one can ignore this pain and keep going, fueled by anger so strong their eyes bleed. To fight on burns a human's life force, their second limitation. Once that life force is gone, death is certain. Tanjiro is about to pass that limit. Cross that threshold for even 1 second, even while fighting a demon, and you will vomit blood for years. If anger alone could carry you through, then demons would have been wiped from the earth a millennia ago. So this kind of explains the blood tear state and explains what's going on. So after reading this, I went back and watched it, and I did notice that right before Tanjiro's sister appeared to him to remind him to breathe, the flames around his sword went out completely. And this is actually the animator showing that his life force was completely drained and that he was literally mere seconds away from death. So what do you think of all that information? Did you catch it the first time? Did you know that? Is some of this new? And what do you think about the situation at hand now that Tanjiro has been immobilized?
Well, I definitely, interesting take on my end. I never read anything before Swordsmith Village in the manga. So that is actually brand new information to me. Now knowing that makes a lot of sense. Looking at the situation at hand, though, Tanjiro's still on death's door, though. Like, yes, he's got oxygen in his lungs. However, he's literally like collapsed in front of upper 6. And we saw him collapse in front of upper 11, and he barely made it out alive. Or lower 11.
Upper 11? Lower 5?
Number rank thing. You know
whatever
what I
that
mean,
number was.
right?
I'm so confused for a moment.
But still, he's in a tough spot.
Yeah, to say the least. Definitely in a tough spot. It's been a while since I've read the manga, so it's good to hear that. And I don't think that I remembered that off the top of my head watching this again. Obviously, we know he's in bad shape. He's bleeding from his eyes. He's bleeding from multiple other areas and orifices in his body. He's like going well beyond what his limits are for sure. And we kind of knew that, I think. The thing I think that would have given it away to me that he was close to death's door is because we saw one of his siblings begging him to breathe in not a flashback exactly, but like appearing to him in his own mind. And so far, that's only happened really when he's been knocking on death's door already. So I think that that was the indicator for me without having taken a look back at the manga myself. But yeah, the situation's not great right now. He's still up there with Daki, and he is tapped out at this point. He literally can't go any further. So when will he learn?
Never. It's interesting that you call that out, because your comment about seeing his sibling in a vision, it wasn't like a flashback or anything, made me think about Rengoku's last moments too. Because we talked about that when we reviewed Mugen Train, was like, you're in your final moments, like many times you're met by someone you know, and it's like he had that moment, but his sister was like, you can keep going, just breathe. So really powerful. And his family drives him, even though most of them are gone, and this is like very consistent with the story. So definitely a lot of little indicators that he was knocking on death's door. I thought it was very interesting because I didn't read the manga here beforehand either. I also started with Swordsmith Village, so I went back and read that and found that very interesting. And also the animator's choice to, take away the flames as that little like, hey, by the way, his life force is gone. Very interesting. But of course, Tanjiro is our main character, so we can relax a little bit. He's probably not going to die. And he has a partner in crime who, of course, jumps into action to protect him. I will have to admit, I was expecting Tengen to show up. But Nezuko jumping in and kicking off Daki's head was very satisfying, and I will take it. Is their teamwork continuing to improve?
Absolutely. And I think that part of that is that both of them are getting more in touch with their own abilities and are growing stronger. Her instincts are spot on, and she always is able to jump in right when he needs her. So we talked about this. Can Tanjiro face an upper moon alone? Maybe not at this point, because somebody's going to jump in and help him here. But this time it's his little sister, which is really, really sweet. So it's nice to get to see them continue to hone and develop their teamwork. And I love getting to see Nezuko kick some ass. We've talked about this before, but I just, every time we see her, I just want more. And it's really tricky when you have a character that doesn't communicate verbally very much, for them to have a striking presence and for you to remember that they're there. And she's not going to let you forget in this moment. It's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, I always think that like Nezuko could have been a part of Blue Lock too, right? Like with those kicks, like I'm dead.
I was like, where are you going with this, Bryan?
But really, I think it's really interesting that this like kind of work in tandem comes through again. And I think it's really important that we see the opposite side of the coin. You know, other siblings of fire that we've seen, right? Azula and Zuko, two very different sides of a flame. But this time, you know, we have siblings of fire who can kind of fuel each other to a certain extent, right? Like it's almost like a tag team like Capcom match. Like, hey, I'm not doing too good. Hop in, bud. And then, you know, he gets a breather, right? He gets some water. He has like his boxing coach in the corner, like doing his thing. Not really, but I think at this point, like you're seeing the ability to pass the torch off between each other. And I think that's kind of because they were the adults of the family to a certain extent, right? Like their mom could only do so much with so many kids. So they had to step up. And I think that this is just applying that in that moment.
I've said it before, I'll say it again. I love them. It's like they have a sixth sense. Like, first of all, Tanjiro would be dead like 10 times over if it weren't for Nezuko being there with him. Like, let's be real here. And this is one of those moments, you know, he was like out of the woods by getting oxygen in his lungs, but Daki was seconds away from slicing his head off, which he's not a demon. He would be dead. And I just love to see the protector be protected. And I think that's kind of how their relationship goes, is Tanjiro is like always like, I'm going to protect Nezuko. I'm going to protect Nezuko. But then sometimes she has to do it because he's putting his human body on the line. And he's way more mortal than she is. So words are hard sometimes. Another moment that the manga explains that the anime doesn't, Nezuko's rage is partially fueled because of Muzan's cells in Daki's veins. She can sense that this demon has more of Muzan in her than any of the demons that they faced before. And another important moment here is we see Nezuko's memories of the fateful night that Muzan slaughtered their family. So we actually have not seen this through her eyes. We have seen that scene multiple times, but it's always through Tanjiro's memories of arriving to see them already dead. This is our first glimpse of what Nezuko saw. Now, we try to bring her up a lot on the podcast like we already have today. We like to bring up her emotions and the trauma that she's been through and what she as a character is going through, because a lot of people can tend to forget a little bit about her. But I think this is probably the most important moment to date for her, because we're seeing this new side. What do you think of this development in Nezuko now and moving forward?
Oh, this is like peak. Like we were handed peak right here. Like, let's be real. Like Nezuko got, I think, what was similar to Tanjiro, you know, in his battles, that emotional fuel that he needed to kind of keep going. I think maybe this was her own kind of godsend. You know, Tanjiro had the mysterious figure with the Hanafuda earrings and Mujin train. Nezuko's finally getting her like spark, if you will. that kind of ignites her own, because at this point, right, she's now pissed. Like, she, I think, is starting to really come to like age 9 or 10 without verbal skills, that she's like, okay, this person killed my family, and I can tell that there's still that remnant here. So you're bad.
Yeah. And I wonder, the more time that she spends in this form, but also close to her brother and developing these skills, like it almost seems the closer she gets back to her humanity, even though she was provided blood in some regard. Like, we know that her run-in was with Muzan. We don't know too many details about exactly what happened because we haven't seen her full memory of the situation. And obviously Tanjiro got there after everything had gone down. But it's possible that she would be like on par with one of the moons if she interacted with him directly instead of, through like some other demon by proxy. And yet she's getting closer and closer to her humanity. And so I wonder, like, as these memories begin to peek through, how she's going to continue to develop that. But in this moment, it's manifesting as rage, because she, I think, is able to make the connection between Daki in front of her and Muzan, knowing that Daki's one of the upper six and therefore the closest. I think there's like a sense of blame that's being placed, and a moment for her to exact some revenge and to have some agency in what was done, not only to her family, but to her too.
She's also very protectively standing over Tanjiro too. I think the fact that he's so injured and like bleeding everywhere, coughing up blood at this point, is also fueling those memories as well, as she like stands over his like frail body at this point in time. So I think it's just everything all at once, and it's kind of bringing back her humanity. I don't think she has had a moment to actually kind of relive those moments there yet. So even though what's about to happen is pretty wild and, demonic, it still is like as if she's gaining her humanity back. Oh my gosh, I'm struggling so much to speak today, but we're making it through. So Tanjiro has now passed out from everything that's gone on. We have fully shifted our attention to Nezuko because of this. It seems that Daki is kind of able to overpower her quickly. We see this flashback of Muzan talking to Daki, saying like, you need to take care of this demon. She got out of my grasp just like Tamayo. She seems to slice Nezuko in half and sends her flying into a building. Following her, she taunts her, calling her a half-baked demon, telling her she'll expose her to the sun. And then things start to go wrong for Daki again. Nezuko has already healed enough to stand, and we see her regenerate her arm quicker than we have ever seen. She's once again, Daki's shocked by a Kamado sibling. The Kamado siblings are working together to shock Daki today, and declares her regenerative powers at the level of an upper rank. We also see Nezuko's adult form for the first time. I know it's a little controversial. This episode develops both Kamados extremely well. Like, we have spent this entire episode on the two of them, as we see both of them transform into something new. We also see a hint of Nezuko regenerating her leg almost instantaneously at the end. So what do you think this says of the lengths that Nezuko will go to protect the people that she loves? And how are we feeling about the Kamado transformations that are happening?
Well, I definitely think there's a recurrent theme here with the Kamados. It's just been a little less noticed by us, I think, until these moments happen, because again, she's a character without effectively a verbal voice at this point. Anything that we're going to see from her, she has to represent physically. And I think that she is showing how far she is willing to go, which is like to the death if necessary. She is charging right in. Fortunately, it doesn't seem like death is going to be coming for her anytime too soon, because for one thing, she has the demonic regenerative ability, so she should be relatively okay. But she's also just getting stronger, getting more in touch with that humanity. And like we said, she is already being noticed by Daki as like maybe having some of the characteristics of something that would be an upper moon. And we know again that her interaction was directly with Muzan, so I think that that's totally on the table, that like had things gone a different way and she had, maybe not had the strong family ties that we know the Kamado siblings for, she could have been an upper moon, and she is ready to go toe to toe with the ones that already are.
I think at this point, right, we've talked about Tanjiro's mark, but is this Nezuko's mark manifesting, right? Does she have a mark as her own? Because you kind of see the leafy pattern appear all over her. And obviously the leaves are green, but you also see hints of red. And it's really towards the inner of like the stems and the leaves themselves. But I think that's an interesting kind of play on, a blood demon art to a certain extent. And is it a blood demon art mixed with this unknown mysterious power? And I think that's kind of the question to answer here, is Nezuko just as powerful as Tanjiro without a voice? And I think it's very interesting how Nezuko's presence is really demonstrated. And, I wish we would get to hear her speak. However, in a certain way, she doesn't have to speak. Her presence on screen does a lot for herself because she doesn't waste a second. She really gets right into it. And I think letting her emotions kind of speak for herself does a number. Because, the only time we've heard Nezuko's voice actor truly say something so far, I believe, as a demon, was her fight against Rui when she said blood demon art, and I don't remember what came after, but pink flames blew up. So
Buckets?
I think that's what
I said it in Japanese.
But yeah, I think Nezuko is really able to kind of build her own brand on screen, if you will.
It's exploding blood was her blood demon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I really think it's powerful to see this transformation and this power that she is getting. I think the leaf pattern on her body, it felt very random to me, but I feel like there might be more meaning behind that. Maybe we'll discuss that later, but I think that she obviously is a child born of fire as well, but if she were a slayer, would she use Hinokami Kagura? Or would she be like a flower breathing? I mean, like, that's a good question to ask. Like, I've heard a lot of people talk about it. Like, what kind of breathing would Nezuko use? Would she just do the Hinokami Kagura as well? Because Tanjiro's the only one who learned that dance. It was like a dance that was passed on to the eldest son. So what would she do? I don't know.
I mean, it is Women's History Month, so I think, like, the pink flames speak for themselves. I think she would have been either flame or sun, because her blood demon art, I think blood demon arts can be a parallel to breathing styles in a certain extent, right? Like, they're both the supernatural powers provided to each side of the coin. But I think in this dynamic, she already has the supernatural attunement to some sort of combustion. So she could have also been Sparky Sparky Boom Lady. Who knows?
Not Sparky,
the Avatar
Sparky
references.
Boom Lady.
The Avatar references this episode are going strong. Oh man. Yeah, maybe she would be some kind of flame breathing, but it would be pink.
Pink, and it would be something that Muzan's interested in because he called it out specifically.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Man, fun to theorize on things for sure. This is such a powerful episode. It's beautiful, and it's just so amazing to see both Kamado siblings go like God mode. But it's also a little sad when you think that they're just two children pushed to the brink of death and beyond. But I think it's important for them as characters to experience that in the levels that they are because of what they do. And we're seeing that growth come out of it, and some really amazing moments as well. It's an important aspect of the story that is continuing to develop. I'm struggling so much today. Any final thoughts before we move on to our favorite moments? All right. Well, what an amazing episode. Speaking on favorite moments, mine has to be Blood Tier Tanjiro versus Daki. Just that entire fight scene from start to finish. Tanjiro is a total beast. The soundtrack is spectacular. The animation is just chef's kiss. Everything about it gives me chills. I think that fight scene within the episode is when I was just like sitting there going like, oh, this is my new obsession. And the rest is history. And now here we are. I really like to see Tanjiro go God mode, but do it in such a calm and collected way that we haven't really seen. I think it's good character development for him. He's usually so wild and over the top when he's angry, but this is the first time his anger kind of helps him. So super powerful.
I think with this one, my favorite moment is going to go to, I think it's going to go to Daki being terrified. And I think that kind of sets a tone for Tanjiro's development in really the other, really both Tanjiro and Nezuko at that point, because that's when we really learn, and I think we start to really draw the parallel to that mysterious figure who is yet to be named, and kind of their power levels. It kind of gives us, like I said earlier, the mystery of what the hell's going on here, right? Like, we know that Tanjiro is somewhere in like this mystical space, but where do all the pieces of the puzzle fit together? And I think that's the hardest question to try and answer on your own. Obviously without reading the manga. So I think it provides, the anime watchers something really interesting as context for what does power in this world look like, and how does, Tanjiro and really the rest of the world like fall on the power scale.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of really good moments to choose from here. I think, though, that I'm going to piggyback off Hannah a little bit here with the favorite moment, but I wanted to call out specifically not just the OST, but the sound design in the fight between Tanjiro and Daki. This was something after we got to go see the premiere, and we got so spoiled in the premiere with, I think, the way that the theater was equipped to present any kind of audio format, but it really just highlighted the sound design and how much work went into that and how deeply layered it was. And so going back and watching this again, since seeing the Swordsmith Village and the last 2 episodes of Entertainment District at the premiere, the sound design in this show is incredible. And we know that all of the production qualities are incredible. The animation obviously is like second to none, in addition to the OST and so many other things. But I really just have to compliment this sound design, because even though I was just listening to it here on like my TV and like my little sound bar, if you pay attention to it, you can hear like where the swords are moving as they're moving across the screen, and all the clinking and all the different things and the footsteps. And it's just incredible, the level of thought and detail that's put into this versus like maybe a couple of the other animes that might be out right now. They really, really have put together an incredible team of artists that put everything that they've got into it, and it really shows.
You actually reminded me of something that I forgot. But Daki's belt sounds, they sound like someone's running with a tracksuit, and it's terrifying because I'm like, that has to be like with the speed and like the texture that they are. Beautiful.
Yeah, there's something so satisfying about hearing like a blade cut through something, but at the same time you're hearing like a flame or water or lightning or thunder with it. There's something like the element with the sound of the sword cutting through. Obviously there's not really any other shows that have like that specific type of power system, but I can't like pinpoint anything that like combines multiple sounds so well to just make it so beautiful and so realistic. Like, oh, this is what it would sound like if flames came out of a sword. Just so good. I like that you called that out. It's the little things. The little things that people in the background are working extremely hard at, as much as like the voice actors are, but the voice actors are, in the spotlight while the people that do the sound design aren't, when they probably put in just as much hard work. So they're just as much artists as well. So shout out to them for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
All the small wings.
What?
Oh no, Hannah.
Hannah, tell me you know that song. Surprises
Oh.
let me know she cares.
Yes, I know the song.
Okay.
Oh, thank
Okay.
God.
My emo heart just like I was like, am I emo or am I just old?
I'm
Is
like,
it-
you're only a year older than me.
Sometimes it makes a difference.
I'm
Oh,
dead.
man.
No, I know that song. I was more just saying what to like the way you presented it. Just like,
Oh, yeah.
Nani?
Nani.
Nani?
Nanika. Something.
Bryan and I went to Barnes and Noble last night and we were talking about Hunter x Hunter. This is super off topic, but whatever. And I told him that Killua's sister, Nanika, that is actually the Japanese word for something. And he like just stared at me. I'm like, yeah, it's the Japanese word for something. And he's like waiting for me to say the something that it is. And I'm like, no, it's actually the Japanese word for something.
Man.
Classic comedy.
Classic comedy. You just don't get it. Like, what? Something. Nanika. Anyway, you might catch it in a few episodes. Some characters will say something and you'll hear it. Just throwing that out there.
What are they going to say, Hannah?
What? Something. They're going to say something. Oh, this is going to be a constant loop. All right. Before we go too far off track here with something, that is it. That's it for today. We hope that you enjoyed today's show. And of course, don't forget to follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Hashira Half Hour. We also have Twitter at Hashira Half. You can hit us up if you tweet us, DM us, comment on a video, a question that you want to see answered in the podcast. We might answer it in a future episode. And thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Umai.
Umai.
Umai. Ooh, my.